Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Weekly Sip. Now, I know I missed last week. Sorry, there was just some IRL circumstances I couldn't avoid, but I'm back. Videos are happening again, and in fact, I think I will have one out tomorrow that might be quite relevant to what's going on right now. And since it has been a week, I'm sure you guys missed this. The cup's too overfull. God damn it. Alright, let's get to it. What's it like being autosexual when you're attracted to yourself? Well, that's something that I would know quite regularly, in fact. Sexuality is fluid. As with lots of things, it can evolve and boomerang over time. Though so often thought about in binary terms, such as with gender, there are many different sexualities people identify as. Yeah, I know, everyone likes to be special nowadays. Autosexuality is one such identification that is seldom talked about. It's the idea of being sexually attracted to your car. No, it's this is basically about being sexually attracted to yourself, and all I can think of is that picture of Christian Bale banging the woman, and yet he looks over in the mirror and sees himself, and he gives himself like the thumbs up or the fist pump in the air. And I guess there is something to the idea of autosexuality because, people who are bi and who are gay will tell you, even if you're attracted to the gender that you are, looking in the mirror is not the same thing as looking at somebody else. That probably has something to do with your brain because I know that there's a specific part of your brain that governs your knowledge of what is you and what isn't you. And in fact, there was I forget her name, she was a neuroscientist who had a stroke and decided while she was going through the stroke to carefully watch herself and see which parts of her brain were shutting down. And then she realized at one point during the stroke that she could no longer tell the difference between her body and things that weren't her body. It all felt like her. So maybe these people that are autosexual have some form of brain damage. Gia Vitale, or whatever, is autosexual and autoromantic. She is also engaged to get married to herself after proposing in March 2017. Haven't we already covered the idiots that marry themselves on this channel already? Like, don't they end up cheating on themselves because they find somebody else to bang? Actually, because really, this whole marrying yourself trend, that's just because you suck and you can't find somebody. After becoming aware of her sexuality at the age of 7, she didn't explore her feelings until she was in college. You mean you didn't masturbate till you were college? Really? Now, after unlearning her preconceived notions about relationships and the idea that you have to be with another person for it to be valid, Gia wants to normalize autosexuality. She wants to normalize being alone and being unlovable and being unable to actually form a bond with another human being. I don't know if that's a good thing to normalize, frankly. My earliest memories of checking myself out in the mirror and feeling attraction happened at around age 7. Does that make you a pedophile? Because you were looking at a 7-year-old. My attraction to myself made me confused at times, but once I learned about autosexuality, I was glad there was a word for my experience. I get the appeal of self-love, right? I get the appeal of being able to have a happy and fulfilled life outside of a relationship because it is possible, There are just instances where sometimes you just don't find the person. And that doesn't mean you have to have a completely empty life outside of that. There are many things you can do. However, it's probably a bad idea to cover it up by saying that you're marrying yourself or something. And let's be honest here, unless you're going to reproduce asexually, this doesn't really seem to have much of a future, does it? Oh god, the hottest new porn genre is pregnant men giving birth. Look at this picture. First of all, I think that baby bump's a bit too small. I think that's quite literally just a soy boy who's lying on the couch, sticking his stomach out. That this is what people like now? What the fuck happened to porn anyway? I don't know if you guys have gone looking for porn recently, but it's all incest now. What the fuck happened? In today's complex world of blossoming sexual interest, there are more kinks out there than flavors at Baskin-Robbins. And the latest genre to get some attention is the niche category of male pregnancy videos, also known as MPreg. The last time I even saw MPreg, it was like a video codec, I think. Vice published a fairly extensive piece on film911.net, an obviously not safe for work gay porn site that specializes in MPreg and other lesser known fetishes. such as hearing guys' heartbeats and the sexual desire to be eaten, also known as vor. Sure, I know exactly what vor is at this point, considering who some of my friends are. The site's videos often include good-looking, chiseled guys acting out these scenarios. Like Connor, who struggles with contractions while lying on the couch and later craves that epidural while giving birth. The Islamic Caliphate can't come fast enough, guys. These categories of porn might have small audiences. No shit. But there are definitely people interested in watching them. According to Jay, the creative genius behind Film 9/11, the site makes a tidy profit. Since there's practically no other place to find these kinds of videos, people are willing to shell out some moolah to get masturbating. Film 9/11 also caters to fetishes like gut punching and belly button worship. Oh, God. Jesus Christ. Okay, so this is an article that's a bit older. It's from 2017. No, actually, it was written in 2016, and yet he came back to it in 2017, like 10 months later, because something needed updating. I'm sure this article was fucking hot enough that it needed updating 10 months later. Let's see if this place is still around, this film911.net. Wait a minute. Do you guys see that? He didn't even do the link right in his article. It just says film911.net twice. Here we go, film911.net. Oh my. This fucking guy's face is like, I am not getting paid enough for this shit. Here's something more contemporary. I was America's first non-binary person. It was all a sham. Who would have thunk? Who would have thunk that inventing your own fucking genders would have turned out to be a non-starter? I mean, this person looks like they're probably trans, and that's one thing, right? Like, most trans people, they don't want a weird set of pronouns. They don't want some kind of strange gender or sexuality to be recognized. They just want to be recognized as the other one. And most of the time, that's completely fine and acceptable. 4 years ago, I wrote about my decision to live as a woman in the New York Times, writing that I had wanted to live authentically as the woman I had always been, and had effectively traded my white male privilege to become one of America's most hated minorities. Well, why would you trade your privilege? Especially if the privilege is so overarching, so valuable as they say it is. Why would you trade that privilege? Maybe there's something to gain out of being a hated minority. 3 years ago, I decided I was neither male nor female, but non-binary, and made headlines after an Oregon judge agreed to let me identify as a third sex, not male or female. Now I want to live again as the man that I am. Yeah. I mean, you know, I get it. Usually people who experiment, they're in college. They're not like 50 as you seem to be. But, you know, fair enough. I'm one of the lucky ones. Despite participating in medical transgenderism for 6 years, my body is still intact. Most people who desist from transgender identities after gender changes can't say the same. But that's not to say I got off scot-free. My psyche is eternally scarred, and I've got a host of health issues from the grand medical experiment. After convincing myself that I was a woman during a severe mental health crisis, I visited a licensed nurse practitioner in early 2013 and asked for a hormone prescription. If you don't give me the drugs, I'll buy them off the internet, I threatened. Although she had never met me before, the nurse phoned in a prescription for 2 mg of oral estrogen and 200 mg of spironolactone that very same day. The nurse practitioner ignored that I have chronic post-traumatic stress disorder, having previously served in the military for almost 18 years. All my doctors agree on that. Others believe that I have bipolar disorder and possibly borderline personality disorder. I should have been stopped, but out-of-control transgender activism had made the nurse practitioner too scared to say no. On the one hand, he's right, he should have been stopped. You know, that's the thing about being a medical health professional. You have the authority to say, hey, I'm not writing this prescription. Do whatever you want, but that's on you. I'm not going to play into this. And this person very clearly didn't do that. And maybe they're too afraid to because of, you know, transgender lobbyism right now. At the same time, he's also very clearly responsible for his own actions. So he can't turn around and just blame the entire medical industry while getting off scot-free. He still chose this. despite his altered state of mind, maybe due to his post-traumatic stress, or due to his borderline personality, or due to his bipolar disorder, he still chose to do all this himself. I'd learned how to become a female from online medical documents at a Department of Veterans Affairs hospital website. After I began consuming the cross-sex hormones, I started therapy at a gender clinic in Pittsburgh so that I could have people sign up on the transgender surgeries I planned to have. All I needed to do was switch over my hormone-operating fuel and get my penis turned into a vagina. Then I'd be the same as any other woman. That's the fantasy the transgender community sold me. It's the lie I bought into and believed. Only one therapist tried to stop me from crawling into the smoking rabbit hole. When she did, I not only fired her, I filed a formal complaint against her. She's a gatekeeper, the trans community said. Professional stigmatisms against conversion therapy had made it impossible for the therapist to question my motives for wanting to change my sex. 2 weeks hadn't passed before I found a replacement therapist. The new one quickly affirmed my identity as a woman. I was back on the road to getting my fake vagina. There's abundant online literature informing transgender people that their sex change isn't real. But when a licensed medical doctor writes you a letter essentially stating that you were born in the wrong body and that a government agency or court of law validates that delusion, you become damaged and confused. I certainly did. Now see, this is definitely the case of a person who had many other problems, and they were self-misdiagnosed, and others misdiagnosed them as being transgender. This is not to say that being transgender doesn't exist. For example, I'm a great believer, now that I've gotten to know her, that, for example, Lilith is definitely a transgender person, and that her life is most likely far better living as a woman, taking estrogen, doing what she can to transition. But even then, even she doesn't want to go through with the full surgery because it really doesn't seem to be effective, does it? Like, okay, I've heard of people who thought they were transgender, they took some hormones, they gave it a try, they said, you know what, this really isn't me, and then they detransitioned. Okay, I've heard of people who have thought they were transgender, they take some hormones, they live as the other gender, they say, I'm now really happy, and it turns out this is who I'm supposed to be. You know, great. I have not heard of a single person who has gone through with genital reassignment surgery and had a positive experience. All right? Maybe it's because that's like the one step where you can't go back, you know? Maybe it's because what you're really getting out of it isn't a penis and isn't a vagina, you're just getting something else, and nobody's really happy with whatever that is. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know, but there's definitely a lot of people out there who have been deluded into thinking this is going to make them happy, deluded by people who have political interests, and it's not making them happy. You know, whatever their other problems may be, maybe they are transgender people who need to live as their gender of choice, but this surgery is not making them happy. And we can't even have a serious discussion about that because to do so makes you a transphobe. In any case, this is an extremely long article. It's all about his various experiences, including his childhood, including his struggle to actually transition, including what happened later, and his escaping to non-binary, as he puts it here. There's a lot here to go over, and frankly, this is like there's not enough time in this video to do that. But here's a few things we can pull out of it. Eventually, as this person realized that their journey to become a woman was not, it wasn't helping them, it wasn't fulfilling them, they got their sex designation on their birth certificate switched to unknown. It was the first time in DC history a birth certificate had been printed with a sex marker other than male or female. At the same time, they didn't like being named after the uncle that molested them, so they got a new name. Pennsylvania judge didn't question the name change. Wanting to help a transgender person, she had not only changed my name, but at my request, she also sealed the court order, allowing me to skip out on a ton of debt I owed because of a failed home purchase and begin my new life as a woman. Instead of merging my file, 2 of the 3 credit bureaus issued me a brand new line of credit. That's quite helpful, isn't it? And then we come to the section, Walking Away from Fiction. It wasn't until I came out against the sterilization and mutilation of gender-confused children and transgender military service members in 2017 that LGBT organizations stopped helping me. Most of the media retreated with them. Overnight, I went from being a liberal media darling to a conservative pariah. Both groups quickly began to realize that the transgender community had a runaway on their hands. Their solution was to completely ignore me and what my story had become. They also stopped acknowledging that I was behind the non-binary option that now exists in 11 states. The truth is, my sex change to non-binary was a medical and scientific fraud. Sure enough, the morning of my brief court hearing, the judge didn't ask me a single question, nor did this officer of the court demand to see any medical evidence alleging that I was born something magical. Within minutes, the judge just signed off on the court order. And here we are. This is something that we can't talk about, because to do so is to be transphobic. But nonetheless, there's a serious conversation that needs to be had here. I'm not saying it's easy for people who are transgender, and I'm not saying that it's easy for people who think that they're transgender but actually aren't, and they just have some other problem. But just because their paths are hard, and just because we do probably have some obligation, at least on a social level, to assist them, doesn't mean that we don't ask any questions. Doesn't mean that we don't approach the situation with a skeptical eye. I think Tim Pool said it best on the Joe Rogan podcast with Jack and his confused Indian sidekick, that Twitter does not have a special set of rules for people who have any other type of body dysmorphia. And yet even questioning that rule is grounds for a banning on Twitter. That is completely ridiculous. And in fact, not only is it ridiculous, it hurts people like this. People like this who would actually benefit from being questioned, even if it might make them angry in the short term. In January 2019, unable to advance the fraud for another single day, I reclaimed my male birth sex. The weight of the lie on my conscience was heavier than the value of the fame I had gained from participating in this elaborate swindle. 2 fake gender identities couldn't hide the truth of my biological reality. There is no third gender or third sex. Like me, intersex people are either male or female. Their condition is the result of a disorder of sexual development, and they need help and compassion. I played my part in pushing forward this grand illusion. I'm not the victim here. My wife, daughter, and the American taxpayer are. They are the real victims. Maybe this is what happens when you completely pathologize the idea of maleness in a society. Maybe you end up taking men who might have their own problems, but those problems get twisted into a complete hatred of masculinity or a complete hatred of maleness because of this overarching loathing of the patriarchy or toxic masculinity or whatever the fuck. And then some of those men are just on the tipping point that they say, you know what, I would rather fake being transsexual, or I would rather try to delude myself and maybe even believe for a time that I'm transgender because I hate what I am so much. And maybe that's the difference. Maybe a real transgender person is someone who loves being the opposite gender, while someone like this just hates their own gender. Maybe that's the difference. Maybe that's how you can tell the difference between somebody who's legitimate and who's just a fake. That they use love as their motivation rather than hatred. You know, I think I'm going to need to do a more detailed analysis of this topic at some point, because even just reading this article and chatting about it with you guys, I'm kind of developing some ideas. So maybe we'll see. Here's our final article though. For us, by us, inside the new social spaces for people of color. In New York, there's a growing movement when it comes to places to gather. Segregation is good, if we do it. Hey, you know what? I have that exact same IKEA table. I think mine's in better shape, though. Members access the space, located in central Brooklyn, by having their fingers scanned and giving a passcode. Upon entering, they find a lounge complete with couches, a barber chair, and books on finance. The spiral staircase leads to an area with workstations. Inside on a recent day, a man who works as a consultant helped 5 others get businesses certified. Another launched a campaign to run for city council, engaging members to assist in outreach. An author presented research in a forum. The Gentleman's Factory brought them all together. As one of the very few spaces in New York City exclusively for men of color, how misogynistic of you. The Gentleman's Factory began as a middle ground between work and home for men who need a venue for networking and socializing. And you know, there's really nothing interesting about this article at all. It's quite literally just, and yeah, there's like a woman's version called Ethel's Club. You know, it doesn't really matter. It's quite literally just like a club that only allows one race in. And really, think about it for a minute. Imagine if white people did that today. Imagine the outcry. There would be a social media shitstorm. There would be a trending hashtag. There would be celebrities talking about how shameful it is. It'd be all over the fucking news. It'd be on every single daytime TV show. And there would be so much heat brought upon it that it would be shut down. And in fact, isn't this actually illegal? I mean, I know it's a privately owned whatever it is. I mean, it doesn't seem to be a business, but it probably is a business technically. I know it's privately owned. However, if it's privately owned, yet it's open to at least members of the public in this regard, doesn't that make it illegal under American law? Because American law does have provisions that businesses have to serve everyone equally. That was the whole thing about, bake the cake, you bigot. Also, Jesus Christ, what's with this guy's fucking hair? What the fuck is with this guy's hair? What is it with me encountering black people recently that have, like, tall-ass heads? And could you at least take your hat off when you're inside, dude? I was going to mention that they all wear shoes, and I forgot that this is an American place, and for some reason, Americans are fucking barbarians about wearing shoes inside the house. Anyway, I'm out, guys. The video I'm planning tomorrow has kind of a spicy title, but I think you will enjoy the results, because I'm going to try to dive deep into a subject. It is a discussion that needs to happen. And frankly, there are people out there who don't want us to have that discussion. Therefore, I think it's very important that we have it. As usual, still streaming every night at twitch.tv/GameBoomers. Tonight, my girlfriend and I are probably going to play and finish up Yakuza Kiwami. It's been a great time. And I hope to see you there for the finale. I'm getting out of here. I love you.